Forkast News is your gateway to all things blockchain. We do the deep dive and the due diligence on the blockchain projects and platforms that matter, because we aim to be the most reliable source of intellectual discourse and insight that inform, educate, and bridge the gap between the blockchain industry and the mainstream. Welcome, I'm Angie Lau, Editor-in-Chief and founder of forkast.news. We are here in Shanghai. We are at the GSMA Mobile World Congress in Shanghai, where tens of thousands and everybody in between, from mobile carriers to operators, are here talking about how emerging technology is changing the industry, but also talking about blockchain. I'm here with Paul Ulrich. He is with GSMA. He's a senior policy manager whose job it is to talk to governments and regulators on behalf of members, 1,200, I believe you said, from mobile operators to and carriers and everybody in between. You are probably one of a few in the company, in the organization, talking about blockchain. This is the first year that Blockchain Summit was part of the verticals here at Mobile World Congress in Shanghai. You're of but one, but certainly a growing number within the organization. Why is blockchain so interesting to your members?
Well, it's getting traction in virtually every major industry. In the C-suites, people are talking about it. Governments are talking about it. When I go around the region, I often offer to give a kind of an introductory presentation on blockchain, and there's always a lot of interest from the government top people to their staff. So they're wanting to learn.
What is the color of that interest? Is it concern? Is it, what is this thing that is blockchain? Kind of give us a degree of emotions and psychology of this interest.
For the blockchain technology itself, there's universal acceptance. I haven't come across one government, either in person or having read about any, that are at all negative about the underlying technology. They are ambivalent about the key application, which are financial cryptocurrencies, because of certain things that have happened over the last 2 years, or 2 or 3 years. But the technology itself, they see the efficiency and productivity gains that can be achieved in the private sector and public sector, and they want to take part in that.
In the Asia Pacific, there is a very interesting dynamic with a lot of emerging and frontier nations. I mean, there's only one developed nation here in the Asia Pacific, and that's Japan. There is an opportunity, though, with emerging technologies like blockchain, for a lot of these nations to leapfrog and join a global economy in a way they potentially never had the opportunity to do so. What are the most exciting nations right now that see the promise of blockchain technology to transform their own economies?
Well, from a regulatory standpoint, I think the one that has been the most active has been India, and that's exciting because of their size and their influence in the subcontinent, especially for the countries around them. And that regulator was the first one anywhere in the world to mandate the use of blockchain for a key regulatory aspect, which is to block unwanted calls, which are a concern for multiple countries, from the US, the UK to India. And that went very well. It took only 9 months to get a working system going, involving 8 operators and fixed line carriers in India. And the regulator wanted to step back and not have to manage that function, but have oversight of it and blockchain allows that. And because they're a regulator and can tell the industry what to do, it was an efficient way of getting a system that basically a few operators were hesitant. They didn't see the immediate return on investment, but the regulator went and published a 100-page explainer on the internet, laying out how they could make more revenue, the operators themselves, because they would have disaggregated information about consumers who could opt in or opt out of different types of wanted or unwanted calls, and that data is very useful. So they explained that you're actually going to do better from this, and they all came on board, and it went so well that now the regulator is thinking of using it for mobile number portability. So it was orders of magnitude improvement in the time to handle sort of blocking of unwanted calls, And it could have the same effect in terms of mobile number portability, which is supposed to take no more than a day, but can go on for weeks as operators, have ways to, the operator who's losing a customer tries to win them back.
Yeah.
So, but with blockchain, you wouldn't have that.
Well, and if you just do a couple of steps more in terms of mental creativity of the changing business logic of applying blockchain, we can talk about digital identification. This is a country still of more than 1 billion people,
right,
half of which are still just the magnitude of being able to individually identify each and every citizen in India.
Yeah,
it's still an impossible task at the moment.
Well, India is actually very advanced in that respect too. Their regulator was the one who put in place a few years ago this Aadhaar system. It's the largest national ID, digital ID system in the world. It covers probably 95, 98% of the population. And it's been very effective. And this is kind of a technical thing, but in blockchain, there's something called a zero knowledge proof, where you only release information that's needed. You don't sort of release everything. So, for example, proving someone is 18 or older to vote or to go to a bar or whatever, they don't have to provide the birth date. They just say yes or no. And the Aadhaar system actually uses that kind of yes/no information. So it was well designed, and so the current chairman of the regulatory authority, he put that in place starting in 2009, and very interested in what technology can do. So yeah, he's been very innovative.
Talk about the other countries as well. Myanmar is interesting. This is a hermit kingdom that when the embargo lifted, most people didn't have cell phones. Today, everyone does. The cost of a SIM card has been reduced to just mere dollars.
Right.
What is the potential of a country like Myanmar to, after decades of not participating in a global economy, what is the potential of not only mobile, but also marrying it with emerging technology like blockchain?
Yeah, Myanmar, probably of any country in history or in the world, had the fastest rate of adoption, not only of mobile phones, but of smartphones. I mean, they went from virtually single-digit penetration of mobile telephony to almost universal coverage and maybe 70% smartphones. So that shows what telecom liberalization can do and how leapfrogging can occur. We are not engaging right now with the government for political reasons. I'm sure you're familiar with what has happened in recent years, and the UN and so forth. But that's an example. But we do work with our member operators there. So blockchain could have all the applications there as elsewhere. Another country at that level, or maybe slightly more advanced, is Pakistan. And Alibaba recently about a year ago bought a 50% share of the microfinance subsidiary of Telenor. And within a few months, they set up a blockchain-based remittance system with Malaysia. And these countries like Pakistan rely hugely on remittances and coming into the country especially. So that's a very quick and straightforward example of a country that's seen as relatively not developed compared to, say, Japan or Korea, but actually implementing something blockchain-based in a much more rapid pace, because I haven't seen, say, a remittance system or international transfer system yet from either Japan or Korea.
Forkast News was just recently doing a reporting trip in Vietnam as well. And what's really interesting is that this is a population median age of 30, one of the youngest in the region. What's exciting about that is also the comfort level of technology. A lot of the young people have grown up with the internet. They know how to use it. The developer talent pool is pretty strong there. How does blockchain help a country like Vietnam? And certainly for policymakers, how do they encourage that ecosystem to thrive, potentially also assisting in the GDP of Vietnam?
About a year ago, I met a Hong Kong-based blockchain company, and something like 90% of their staff and developers were all in Vietnam. They have, as you said, highly trained people, young people, and their cost structure is much lower than Hong Kong for a number of reasons. So that's a great source of jobs and transfer of technology. And Vietnam, like many countries and specific cities, want to become the blockchain city or the blockchain country. So they're welcoming these kind of companies, with all sorts of incentives, for blockchain. Some are more ambivalent, as I said, about cryptocurrency. Korea last year, they were going to ban it, and then they saw that a lot of investment was going to Singapore. Then they reversed their decision. So that's more problematic.
But look, you bring up a great point, because you can't have blockchain industry and hoping for it to thrive, and then suck out the very incentivization called cryptocurrency from it. And so that innovation goes elsewhere. We're seeing it right now from the US side. There's a lot of brain drain when it comes to this technology, and it's coming to Asia. We're seeing it. So how do you tell or talk to a government like Vietnam that says, hey, cryptocurrency is illegal?
Well, I'm a big fan of stable coins, currencies that are tied to fiat. And for example, the recent initiative by Facebook, what didn't get much press, but which is quite interesting, there are 2 lines in its 20-page white paper and 100 pages of documentation about basically saying it wants to create a self-sovereign ID system, which would be an ID system based on blockchain, where the user themselves have control of their data, what is released selectively, decentralized, secure. And that's kind of the holy grail for IDs. Other companies or other foundations, like in Europe, you have Sovereign, Uport. There must be a handful of these that have been working on it. They don't have the scope, the scale of Facebook. So those, while they've been underway, for several years, we haven't seen widespread adoption. And a self-sovereign ID is a kind of platform. It's a kind of system. How do you get a platform adopted? One way is to be a big platform already and tack it on to what you already have. And that's what Facebook is able to do.
How would a country like China think about the Libra project and the impact that it have on the global economy?
Yeah, unfortunately, China, while they have great technical talent and very innovative ecosystem, is increasingly kind of becoming its own Galapagos, as it were. And you might think back to Japan in the 1980s and 90s. They were way out in front in technology, but they also, I think this term of Galapagization started with Japan, sort of a sui generis system. And now their network equipment providers are maybe 1% of the global market, 2% tiny, Fujitsu or NEC. So they had their own system, and it didn't evolve or keep in step and harmonize when the Apple smartphone came out 12 years ago. So there may be a risk for China in that. And on the cryptocurrency side, I don't think they allow it at all, and they're clamping down on the crypto mining. At one point, there were 3/4 of the world's crypto miners there. It's, as you know, I'm sure it's environmentally unsustainable. So with good reason, they've been clamping down on that. But I've heard that, I think this was in the press a while ago, that the People's Bank of China wants to come out with its own digital currency. So they have not allowed the 2 big players, or the 3, Tencent, Alibaba, or even Baidu, to have any kind of cryptocurrency, because I guess they want to do it, make sure they get everything right themselves first.
It's very interesting to see what's happening in China. These conversations thrive, it exists. I was just talking to China Telecom. They're coming up with a blockchain SIM card. So really, they're looking at the adoption of blockchain technology internally here within domestic borders.
Yeah.
Very encouraging,
yeah.
Very warmly.
Right.
But of course, the thing is, how do these policies also kind of suck the oxygen, suck the innovation out of potentially what could be 10x, 100x? For example, it is now illegal to be a node in China unless you get permission from the government first.
Yeah.
That actually kind of damps down on innovation.
Right, and that is sort of scared away at least one company I know of, blockchain firm, that has global operations. They're staying away from mainland China for that reason. It's not only getting permission to have a node, but it also, the Chinese government, if they want, can get access to all the data. And that's fine, but in the West, you need a court order or a warrant. Probable cause you need to show for what we call in the telecom industry, lawful intercept. So if there's probable cause of something wrong going on, we encourage, the law enforcement to take a look. But if not, then that could be construed as invasion of privacy or commercial secrets or whatever. Yeah. So we, in certain countries in the world where they make a request that maybe has political motivations or some other motivation that's not related to these, legal precepts, our operators will push back to the extent that they can and say, well, we need a court order or something to do that.
When did GSMA start thinking about blockchain or even paying attention to it?
Well, I've been with GSMA for less than 2 years, so I think they were thinking about it before I joined. But we only coalesced back in September, and so we have a monthly call of about 30 of us who are interested in it, and so it's been building momentum. And I think you mentioned that this was the first time that they had a blockchain summit in Shanghai. I noticed I've been to the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona twice. It occurs in February, and a year and 4 months ago, blockchain was relegated to a tiny part of the whole exhibition hall, and then this year it moved to a hall 8, getting closer to the main stage. So I expect by next year it will be on the main stage in Barcelona itself. I'd be very surprised if it's not. Yeah.
It is that quickness of the evolution and adoption. What do you think is driving it? Why do you think people are getting more and more excited about it within the industry?
Well, I think the applications, the proof of concepts that were, across all industries are now moving into production level systems. So all the major platforms, the Googles, the Facebooks, Amazon, Tencent, Alibaba, SAP in Germany, those are the big ones worldwide. They all have a blockchain as a service offering. It's standard with whatever their cloud platform is. And telecom operators, mobile operators, we know we have to compete with those guys with cloud services and so forth. So we should have a similar kind of blockchain as a service. And we have certain advantages, as in 5G, as it's evolving and taking hold now in a number of countries, you're going to have mobile edge computing very soon. And the telco operators are best positioned at the edge of the network. So yesterday in the Innovation City, or the 4 years from now, I saw a very interesting presentation of a startup that has a blockchain solution and a chip that it's developed to handle payments, automatic payments among things at the edge, where the telcos, the mobile operators are strong and they have control. Whereas the global, internet players, they have these big cloud services, but they don't have the ties that we do in the local governments.
And it's centralization as well.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like you're talking about what naturally exists in the telcos, which is decentralized.
Yeah.
Everybody, there's 1,200 members around the world, but all under one umbrella. That umbrella is becoming increasingly powerful. Where do you see telcos, our smartphones, blockchain being 4 years from now, 5 years from now?
Well, predictions are hard, especially when they're about the future. But your smartphone is a kind of Internet of Things device. It's the end point of a network, and blockchain is often combined with artificial intelligence and with IoT or Internet of Things. For example, increasingly at point of sale, which is also a kind of end device. So you're going to have AI embedded more and more in your smartphone. Already some of it's there, with systems like Siri, voice recognition. When you type an email, it automatically fills in the words correctly for you. So I can take notes faster on my smartphone than I can on my laptop. So all that functionality will be at the edge of the network, on your smartphone, on your Internet of Things device, and it'll occur without human intervention. It's what operators refer to as zero-touch interaction. So it doesn't require humans to monitor or oversee it. And it has a number of uses, including, most importantly, I think, cybersecurity. Because for the Internet of Things, one drawback, the weak point, are these devices which often don't have the computing power to have adequate security. And so they're a vector for hackers. And if you can get into a system that's centralized, you can get into the whole system. So blockchain, apart from securing the network edges, its decentralized nature is also inherently more secure against hackers. And so it has multiple benefits. And we're already seeing, for example, in Korea, about 2 months ago, KT, which is the largest fixed line and mobile operator, they announced a 5G-based IoT blockchain secured system called GigaChain. And basically what it does is it uses blockchain to mask the IoT device address, because just like on the web you have website addresses, every IoT, anything that connects to the internet has its own address, and there are services that can look those up, and hackers can buy them. You know, it's several $100s a month, can buy into those services and access, whether it's smart city street lights or electric grids perhaps. Hopefully those are more secure, but or consumer home devices.
Or turn off my refrigerator.
Right, yeah, you certainly don't want that to happen, just to be a nuisance. So they could do all sorts of things, and so blockchain can be used to hide that. Yeah.
Well, I expect to see you on the main stage. I think blockchain is going to be on the main stage, and it will stay there for the years to come. It is an incredible insight into what telcos are also thinking, and also what policymakers and governments across Asia Pacific are thinking. So, Paul, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you later. I'm Angie Lau. Until then.